Hello and welcome to Wisdom Bites. Hope you're well. Thank you once again for joining us. Very much appreciated. And in today's program, I'm going to be looking at one particular signal which seems to be very significant both in a bear market as well as in a bull market. I'm going to show you that why in a bull market, after each correction, this particular signal seems to be giving us a massive rally to the upside. I'll also be having a look at one of the Beit indicators to know exactly where we are in this bull market and how far we may have to go. And as per usual, we'll have a look at the wider markets to know exactly what's happening in the background of Bitcoin to give us some sort of a direction for Bitcoin over the next few weeks and months. So if that sounds interesting, then without further ado, get yourself a cup of tea, sit yourself down, eyes on the screen, and let's get cracking. But before I begin, the usual polite reminder, please remember everything in my videos is just for educational purposes. So please always do your wider research before you make any investment decisions or any swing trade decisions. So what is this signal which has triggered off two big rallies so far within this current bull market? So we're on the 12-hour chart here. And we're looking at the yellow line, which is the 20 simple moving average, and the white line, which is the 50 simple moving average. And these lines have been playing out since the bottoming of the market at the 15,400. And if I take you to the last two times, as per the title of the video, if you look at the last two times, and because we're expecting Bitcoin to go into the parabolic phase, so this is where we can really expect the bigger moves to come. So the last two times this has happened, where the 20 has crossed over the 50, that was over here. If we have a closer look at this point, so these were the last two times, over here and over here. So back in September when these lines crossed, before this correction that we got down here, the market had rallied by around about 85%. So that was then followed by this correction here. And one more time, once it crossed back up again, the last move to 73,000 was at 75%. So the last two times this has crossed has been 85 and 75%. And if you look over here, what's happened, we've just had this correction of the 73,000 and the lines are crossing one more time here. And the question is, are we now going to have one of these big parabolic moves here? Only time will tell, but certainly these are the types of signals we need to be aware of, because what it does is it helps you to look beyond the correction here and not get shaken out by some of these moves to the downside. Because one of the things that you always find that whenever we have a correction, you see a lot of people being shaken out by these big moves to the downside because they can't handle it. And so knowing these little signals tells us that we're still in the bull market alongside some of the other signals that we have. So all these are additive to our understanding to what the Bitcoin price is doing and what it's about to do going into the next few days and weeks. So I hope you found that useful. And one of the things I've noticed is that whenever we have a correction or a consolidation move which grinds people because they haven't got the patience and they get shaken out at exactly the wrong time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a particular phrase which will overcome some of your fears when the market goes down to these points here and you feel like it's going to go much lower or the bull market has come to an end, etc., etc. Whatever it is, the fears that you get down here at these low levels, there's a particular phrase that will help everybody here, and this is one of the ways to add value to people watching this video, is this one here by W. Clement Stone. And you can use this phrase in every walk of life. Whenever you have the definiteness of purpose, this is the starting point of all achievement. So whatever it is you want to achieve in life, if you have a definite purpose, then on the path to achieving that purpose, you're going to come across challenges and difficulties and problems that you all have to overcome. But because you have this purpose, that is what will pull you through the difficulties and the problems and the issues you have along the way to achieving that great purpose. But before I go into the Bitcoin side of things, my great mentor, Jim Rohn, who I've been following for the last 30 years, this is what he said about purpose and why we should take heed of this, just to home in on this particular point. So what he said here, that the other great advantage, if you have purpose for the future, is that it pulls you through all kinds of challenges and all kinds of difficulties. If you don't have these strong purposes for the future, it's easy to get swallowed by a bad day. So let's see how this relates to Bitcoin. So in this current 4-year cycle, we started at the top of this bull market in 2021. We've had 1 year of a bear market. So far, we've had about 16, 17 months of the bull market. And our purpose here, as has been this cycle as well as the previous cycle, our purpose is, our destination, our goal, our objective, our dream, our vision is this here. This is the destination we're going to get to. You can call this the purpose, but if you don't have the definiteness of this purpose here, you will get shaken out. If I go on the weekly chart, if you don't have this purpose, this goal, this dream, this vision to get to the top here, whenever we have these types of corrections here along the way, we will unfortunately lose a lot of people in this space who will get shaken out, because at every point they're going to be expecting this to be happening and that we've come to the end of the bull market. So the same thing happened here. As soon as we started having this correction, you see the comments coming in, we've come to the end of the bull market. And those are the people that will actually get out of the market, and then they'll come back and reclimb back up again at these higher points here. And we really don't want this to happen to us. So what we really have to do is have this purpose, and then by showing you these types of charts, like the 12-hour chart I've shown you, look at those signs to give us some sort of encouragement not to get shaken out, because the emotion plays a very important role here. And you can apply this particular phrase of allowing the purpose to pull you through. So whenever we get to these points, we think of the purpose and it'll pull us through. Whenever we have this correction here, we think of the purpose and it'll pull us through. So let the purpose pull you through the difficulties and the problems and the issues and the challenges that you will get along the pathway to your destination. And this is our destination at the end of the bull market, wherever that's going to be. So I hope you found that useful. So just moving on from that particular theme and tying it in with those people who think that we've come to the end of the bull market, we're going to have a look at this. Yes, it's time to have a look at the Beit countdown. And this is one I haven't shown you before, so I thought you'd find this very interesting. As you can see, this chart is all about long-term holders. In case you're wondering what NUPL stands for, it's the net unrealized profit loss levels. But what I want you to look at are these color codes here. And these are the tops of the previous bull markets. This one here at the end of 2013, this one at the end of 2017, and the last technical peak that we got in April 2021. Although the 69 in November 2021 was the actual peak. But for purposes of showing you this particular Beit indicator, I'm going to take the one in April. So notice the yellow circles here, and at each of the previous peaks, what we've got is a color blue in each of these yellow circles. So when we peaked here, the color was blue. When we peaked here, the color was blue. And notice where we are now. We're on green at the moment. And green is the color that precedes the blue color before these peaks occur. So you can see here as well, the green came before the blue, and here the green came before the blue. So we are very much towards the end of this bull market, and we're in the green territory at the moment, and we're waiting for this blue to start on this particular chart. So that tells you that we haven't got into the last phase, the blue phase, the parabolic phase of the current bull market. So really, this is not the time to get shaken out, and this is the time to let the purpose pull us through the challenges that we've just had with the correction from 73 all the way down to 56,000. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the background information to how we can actually analyze Bitcoin going forward over the next few weeks and months. As you know, the Bitcoin miners are mining around 450 Bitcoins per day, and before the halving it was 900 a day. So since the halving, the supply of the new Bitcoins being mined is now half of that, i.e. 450. And it's important to have a look at the Bitcoin fees per day, because as these fall, which has been happening since the halving itself on the 19th of April, as you can see, the fees reached about $56 million, and the current fees are $1 million. So they've fallen off absolutely drastically down here, which means that the inefficient miners can't afford to keep their older machines online because of the electricity costs, which is the greatest cost amongst all the Bitcoin miners. And if they haven't got enough money, enough Bitcoin fees, and the number of Bitcoins they're able to mine is halved since the halving, then many of them are now switching off their machines. And we can see that with the blue line here, the total hash rate since the halving in the middle of April here, the blue line's been going down further and further. As the inefficient miners have been switching off, the hash rate's been falling because the miners can't afford the electricity cost to mine the Bitcoin. And what that really does is that the existing more efficient miners will be able to mine more of the Bitcoin, meaning that they don't have to sell those Bitcoins, i.e. the portion of the 450. And if they're not selling, that means that the price for Bitcoin, if the demand keeps going up, is going to shoot the price up. So this is what happens after every halving, and this is happening one more time. And if we have a look at the liquidity and the leverage players, where they are at the moment, you can see that there is some sort of a yellowish green zone down here, but it is around the 65.5 level here. So we may see the price come back down and retest the 65 level. But just like this very prominent yellow line here, just below the 68,000, this isn't very prominent. So you can see with this chart here, the more yellow it is, the more prominent, or the more the number of leverage players there are there, and the more likely the price is going to come back down. So this isn't a very strong yellow zone. So we'll see what the price does, but certainly need to keep an eye on the 65.5. And if we have a look at the Bitcoin ETF overview and have a look at the asset inflows, and we've been seeing over the last few weeks that this figure here, the 1 day percentage, as well as the 7 days, this has mostly been in the red, but in the last video on Friday that I did, I was showing you that more and more of these ETFs were going into the green. And you can see now on the 1 day chart, it's now gone completely all green here. So you can see that the ETFs and the demand for Bitcoin within those ETFs is now starting to rise one more time. And over the last 7 days, the only outflows we've really had is from the Grayscale Trust here at 2,129. But that's been more than made up by BlackRock at 2,000 and ARK at 4,000. So more than made up. And you've got other ones here, and you've also got the other ones here, Bitwise, at nearly 2,000 as well. So you can see they're all in the green, apart from the Grayscale. So this is now picking up. This is a good sign that going into the next rally for Bitcoin, the demand is picking up, while, as I've just shown you, the supply is falling. Okay, I'm going to have a look at the wider markets, which I covered in more detail in the last video last Thursday. So I don't really want to go into too much of it, but just to confirm what's been happening, if we have a look at the SPX here, as I mentioned in last Thursday's video, what we've got was a confirmation of a new 60-day cycle low here. So we've now gone above the previous high, confirmed the new cycle, and we're going into the midpoint of that cycle. So we should expect some sort of a move into that cycle before some sort of a correction, and then a move back up towards the end of the cycle here on the red line. And in a new cycle like this, we shouldn't be taking out this point here at around about 4,900. So until that happens, and it looks unlikely obviously with this move that we've got here, we should expect a strong move over the next few weeks. And as I've been mentioning with the dollar, we seem to have topped out at this point here and seem to be making a gradual move to the downside. And last Friday, we got this candle close here on the daily chart. And this is a gravestone doji candle, which if you've been watching my videos, you will know that this is a bearish sign that there is a continuation to the downside. So there will be pressure for the dollar to be coming down, which obviously plays into the narrative that the wider markets are moving to the higher side. And you'll see this with the 60-day cycle for Bitcoin as well. So we can expect the dollar to come back down, which should help the wider markets to be going up over the next few weeks. And if we have a look at gold, we can see quite clearly, having broken this neckline here, the gold has been going on a bit of a tear. Even when we had a correction at this point, it didn't come back down to the 61.8. And what it's done now is to close above the previous high here. So what we've now got is a breakout to the upside. And one of the strong signals that we can expect gold to go up much, much further is that it didn't come back down to the 61.8 because there are desperate buyers who are bought up at a higher price here. And that signals to me that we are about to move into quite a big, strong move to the upside for gold. So we'll keep an eye on that, and very similar pictures developing for silver as well. And I want to zoom out on the weekly chart just to give you some sort of a pattern that seems to be developing with silver and why we may well get a massive move to the upside for silver. That is, if we go back here, what we have is that at this neckline, we had this inverse head and shoulders. And once we broke out, look at the massive move we had all the way up here to this point. Then back in 2017, we got another inverse head and shoulders, although we got an elongated and extended right shoulder. But very similar pattern. Once we broke out from here, we got a massive move to the upside. And as I've been showing you over the last many weeks that we've been covering silver, we got another inverse head and shoulders, which at this point, we were saying and expecting for the price to break up to the 30 level here. And now you can see from this point, we've broken out one more time. And the question is, are we going to have a big, massive explosion to the upside like we did here? and even more so the prominent move up here. So all I would say here is that if I was allocated in silver, I wouldn't be taking profits at this point, because there seems to be a long way to go and a larger big move to come with silver. Okay, moving on to Bitcoin and the daily chart and the wedge that we've been looking at over the last couple of weeks. We had this breakout on the 15th of May with this big green candle here. That broke the lower highs pattern that we got, and we've just gone above the $65,000 mark. We need to use that as a support. But as we mentioned in the last few videos, the real level that Bitcoin has to go above is the 67,000, which is this one here. And as you can see, it's finding quite a lot of resistance at this point. But what we are doing is consolidating at the top half of this big move that we've just had. So that's a clue that it has a high probability to break to the upside. And if we have a look at the weekly chart, something incredibly important happened at yesterday's close for the weekly chart of Bitcoin. And that is what we've got here is this particular candle, which is an outside bar bullish engulfing candle. So the body of this candle engulfs the body of the previous candle here. And in candlestick pattern analysis, this is incredibly bullish, especially on a large time frame like the weekly chart. But what we can do is, with this particular candle close, is to see a move further to the upside. So the signal of this powerful outside bar candle is that we should break with a high degree of probability above the 67,000. And for those of you who want to clarify what range Bitcoin may well be actually consolidating over the next few weeks, maybe months, is this particular range here. The top range would be around about the 73,000, and the lower range is going to be about the 60,000. So as we'll see with the 60-day cycle, if we do continue with a consolidation of the 60-day cycle within a particular range, this is the range where you can really expect Bitcoin to be bouncing. And the reasons for knowing this range is that if we do go up here and then get rejected and come back down to this level, this is really not the point to be getting shaken out. And knowing these ranges tell us that we're more likely to bounce back up from the 60,000 back towards the upper range here. So in order to save ourselves the emotional turmoil, if the price does come back down to the 60,000, we need to know that there is a strong support around the 60,000. And what I've been covering with the purpose, our purpose is to this side. So we shouldn't get shaken out by any of these moves to the $60,000 mark. So moving on to the 60-day cycle, what we can see quite clearly, we've made a low at this point here, which is our tentative cycle low for the time being, until it clears this 67,000. So in last week's videos, I put these as two targets. The first one being 65,000 because of this lower highs being created along the way here. And in order to change the direction of the trend from down here to up here, we have to break the previous lower high at this point, which we did duly at this point. So we've gone above the first target of 65,000. That tells us that this could well be the start of the new cycle. For confirmation of that, we need to really break above the 67,000. As you can see here, we keep coming into quite strong resistance. And as I've shown you on the weekly chart, with that outside engulfing bullish candle, the chances are, the probability is, we're more than likely going to break up above this and go to the higher side and get the next resistance at this level here at 73. So that would mean that we would confirm this cycle here on day 42. So I'll put that in once we get above the 67,000. And for those of you who would like to have an update on the Bitcoin miners, just to give you some insight about what's happening, and obviously the Bitcoin miners follow what Bitcoin is doing. So what we're really waiting for now is, having had quite a big correction with the Bitcoin miners, so while Bitcoin has gone down by about 23%, since it topped out at 73,000, what we've got with the Bitcoin miners, if you look at Marathon here, that actually fell down all the way 58%. So you got a lot more volatility with the Bitcoin miners. But on the reverse side of that is that when you do get rallies, which we're expecting now here, when you get these rallies, they can be as big as 300% at a time. And if we zoom out a little bit, we can see that each of these rallies have eventually gone from the bottom to the top of this trend line. Each of those rallies has gone from the bottom of this trend line towards the top of that trend line. to create this particular channel. So what we can see is that with this channel now developed, the next move for Marathon Digital Holdings, which will be reflective of all the other Bitcoin miners, is that if we moved from where we are currently to the top of this white line here, the trend line, and if you look at the timeline, it seems to be very similar that within a 60-day cycle, we tend to move to the top here. So if that was the case, from where Marathon Digital Holdings was on the close of play on Friday at 1945, if that goes on to the 30th of June, which is where we're expecting the end of the 60-day cycle, so the next move for Marathon Digital Holdings to the top of the trend line could well be around about a 200% move. So you can see that this is more like a leverage play on what the Bitcoin price is expected to do in the next rally. And in last week's video, we were looking at the stochastic RSI on the weekly time frame, and we've seen here that with Marathon Digital Holdings, we've crossed back above the blue line. And whenever that's happened, you can see that there's been quite a substantial rally at each of those points, over here and over here, and going back even back here with a big move. So we can expect now with Marathon Digital Holdings as well as the wider Bitcoin miners for a big move to the upside, as all the conditions seem to be ripe for such a move. And for those of you who've been wanting to join the private Bitcoin miners section here at Wisdom Bytes, if you've got a handheld device, then you might not be able to see this join button here, as it doesn't appear on a handheld device, but it does on a desktop. But if you're on a handheld device and you want to join the Bitcoin miners, then you may have to click the more button here. Then you'll see this red button, which is the membership join link. So when you click this, and then you'll be able to join with this blue button here. And I wasn't really aware that you couldn't get that join button below the videos on a handheld device. That's because I never watch videos on a handheld device, but I know many of you do, and many of you mentioned in the comment section that you can't see the join button. So that's the reason why on a handheld device there is no join button below the videos. But if you go into the description box, you'll find it there. Okay, so we'll leave it there. I hope you found value in the video. If you did, then please do remember to like and to subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you've got any comments, questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments below. Until the next time, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.